Did Cyberpunk 2077 actually suck? Personally, I liked it a lot. Like, really a lot. It had a cool story, awesome characters, and well... But I hear the haters. I see the problems with the game, and I understand why a lot of people called the game a quote-unquote flop. The question I want to get to, though, relates more around one of those discussions specifically, and that is around choice in Cyberpunk, and how it relates to all games. You see, a lot of people had problems with Cyberpunk on its release. Bugs, glitches, missing features, and an entire buffet of other transgressions. But digging a little deeper, some had concerns that spawned further than just a quick patch note to fix it up. Upon completing the game, many who purchased it started to play again, this time with a new character, a new sex, and a new way of tackling the game. But soon they realized that this new way wouldn't be so different after all. And this is what happened to me. On my second playthrough of Cyberpunk, I found out just how little my choices in the first playthrough actually mattered. Sure, saving Brick meant I could help him later on. Don't worry, that's not that much of a spoiler. It wasn't that cool anyways. Sure, I would choose different things to say in dialogue, but the more I played and the more differently I played, the closer and closer I got to the realization that, well, none of it mattered. Half the time, the dialogue choices resulted in literally the exact same response from an NPC. Tackling a mission more stealthily resulted in the same final shootout regardless. And those intimate discussions with characters that felt so personal at the time occurred even if I acted like a completely different person. It finally hit me. None of this shit mattered. Almost the only choice I made that actually changed anything was the combat path and style I wanted to play, and which ending I went for right at the very end. So you're probably wondering then, how the hell do I still like Cyberpunk 2077 so much? Choice in video games is an interesting thing. On one hand, choice, agency, is what makes games games. What separates them from other media like books, television, movies, and podcasts is that you get to decide. You get to choose who lives, who dies, and how the story will progress. You aren't a passive passenger along for the ride, you are the ride. The choices you make and the things you do shape the story, just like in real life. And that makes games unique, really unique. And if you had asked me a year ago what makes games better as a medium, I would have said the more choice the better. The greater the agency, the greater the game. But then I played Cyberpunk. I read the complaints, I played multiple times for myself, and with my own eyes can confirm that many of the choices in the game ultimately amount to nothing. There was never a choice in the first place. On the same token though, I can't help but shake the feeling that this is still one of the best gaming experiences I've ever had. How is that? Why do I love a game that tricked me? That made me feel like I had power when in reality I had none. And that is when it hit me like a herd of stampeding cows running from a dog. What? Choice doesn't matter. Yep. Seriously, it doesn't. Who cares if an NPC at the start of the Nomad quest line says the same thing to me every time, no matter how I respond? Because at the end of the day, what makes choice unique is that, well, it's unique. And the more I've thought about it, choice in games, as of yet, isn't. We aren't making a choice like we do in real life. We're simply playing a choose-your-own-adventure. Choose A and B happens. Choose C and rather D occurs. We aren't making real, meaningful choices. On paper, the idea of full agency and the ability to make decisions is what makes games great, But weirdly enough, we aren't quite there yet. Cyberpunk wasn't such a good game because what I did changed things. It was great because what I did meant something to me. Sure, the relationships between characters always plays out the same way. Sure, different dialogue legitimately didn't change anything about the game in any way. What mattered though was that what did happen, the relationships between characters I did form, and the story that did unfold was quite amazing. On my second playthrough, I learned that it always unfolded the same way, but that doesn't mean that the first time I experienced it, it wasn't magical in its own sense. I loved getting to know Judy and Panam. I loved making fun of Takamura, and I loved learning about Johnny Silverhand's insecurities behind his tough guy persona. If I had known all the choices I was making meant nothing, I would have liked the game less, truthfully. But on my first playthrough, I felt as if everything was meaningful, and so it was. And this made me start rethinking how I saw other games too. At the end of Fallout New Vegas Lonesome Road DLC, for instance, spoiler alert by the way, you get to choose who to nuke in the wasteland after all your troubles. One of the options is to nuke the Legion at the east of the Colorado, taking out a force that has enslaved the locals for too long, one of your main enemies as well, but taking out all of the prisoners with them. This ending had a profound impact on the player, and now because of their choices and decisions, they have taken out the big bad guys and hopefully can find peace in the new chaos of the wasteland. What you did mattered, and the decisions you made affected the world around you appropriately. But it didn't really. The same credits roll for every single player that makes that decision. The exact same story plays out, and everyone gets the same generic pre-planned finale. And don't get me wrong, it's one hell of a finale, and the game as a whole rivals some of the best books and movies of our time, in some ways. But most importantly, it never actually gave players a choice, only a decision to make. You see, choice only matters if the choice itself actually matters. What separates decisions and choices is that choices give power to someone, and decisions are simply settling along a path. Games as of yet have only given us these decisions, but never the actual power to affect the world around us. Nuking the Legion does give you a cool ending for sure, but that was always going to happen. Your choice had no power. It was just a meaningless decision to give you a sense of satisfaction at the ending, like you actually did something. Decisions lead you down one predestined and predetermined path or another. The world, the characters, and the systems in the game don't react to your choice. They're simply doing as directed. You had no choice, after all. It doesn't matter if I nuke the Legion in New Vegas, or help Judy in Cyberpunk, or even save Amanda in Mass Effect. It's all just decisions making us feel like we are powerful, when in reality, we are just as hopeless to affect the story as in a book. At the end of the day, all that mattered was that whatever did end up happening had a lasting effect on us. And that's why I liked Cyberpunk 2077 so much. I realized I had no choice, but even the idea that I did at one point made me happy, and what was left was immaculate. But that doesn't mean it always has to be this way. Recently, I made a video about artificial intelligence in gaming. And the main point I was trying to get across there, albeit not very well, was that artificial intelligence is going to change games forever. An agency was what I was referring to. A true sense of choice. Something we've been talking about a lot here in this video as well. Specifically though, what I'm so excited about is that artificial intelligence could finally give us true choice, not just a bundle of decisions. Let me be a little more specific so we're on the same page here. Right now in games, we make a lot of decisions. What dialogue to pick, what people to save, etc., etc. But how the game reacts to those decisions is static. Each player seems the same reaction to their individual action. Boiling it all down, it's a simple call of if this happens, then this occurs. But we can do one better. With the advent of machine learning in gaming, we're at the cusp of an industry about to revolutionize itself. Games with characters that form dialogue responses based on search trees, and words that can be generated using neural nets, all to sound like pre-recorded dialogue. Storylines that extend and shorten in length based on how the player is playing, and robust systems like a real living economy that reacts to how the player plays. A good way to think of it actually comes from a video I watched by The Closer Look, who, by the way, is an awesome YouTuber you guys should check out. In his video, he talks about making a realized world. He talks about how in Skyrim there's a spell that can turn ore into gold. And as a gameplay mechanic, this is sort of neat and helps you generate gold for money and crafting, or vice versa. But where the problem arises is that the game isn't home to a realized world. Spellcasters having the ability to make infinite amounts of gold in reality would decimate, and I mean decimate, the local economies. Gold coins would become useless, the blacksmithing's profession would be in shambles, and the world would be drastically different than how Skyrim portrays a world with such powerful magic. Sure, it doesn't matter from a purely gameplay perspective, but it does hurt the immersion of the world greatly. Just like how my love for Cyberpunk diminished some when I learned I had only had the illusion of choice, not the actual thing. Artificial intelligence can finally help us change this and create games with realized worlds, meaningful choice, and a sense of radical realization that Ken Levine coined in a GDC talk years ago. And at the cornerstone of this transition is finding a true sense of freedom. Creating games that give players the capacity to have true power over their world, like we do in ours today. And the best way to do this is through choice. Real, meaningful choice. Not of the mere deception variety, but of the world-altering kind, quite literally. You see, for millennia, we've told great stories through the medium of speech, books, and those that preceded them. But games promised us something new. Worlds that could rival our own on space, imagination, believability, all while giving us the freedom to change them in ways no others can. And for a while, this has been reserved to quite a few select multiplayer games, like those of World of Warcraft, with storylines you could create not from the games themselves, but from the human minds that inhabit them and form stories with other minds in them. But we're finally now on the verge of a revolution. One where games of all shapes and sizes can design systems with the help of artificial intelligence that pull us deeper into these worlds, these simulations. And at the cornerstone of this change is a new superpower. The power to make a decision that the world has never seen before.